Hi, I'm Matt, and this is my 1961 Airline guitar amplifier, model number 62-9010, made by Valco in Chicago. And I received this amp a few months ago from a friend of mine that was cleaning out her grandparents' basement. Thanks, Barb. And it was in really horrible shape. Had been exposed to a lot of years of moisture and rust and corrosion and other issues. It was completely non-functional, and I have resurrected it from the dead. I'd like to show you what I did to it and then give a demo of it in action. If that's something you'd be interested in watching, stick around. So here's a shot of what we're working with and explanation of what I've done. Here is the power section. Obviously in pretty rough shape, lots of cosmetic mostly, but lots of rust and crud. This appears to be the original power transformer. Still works like a champ. It's got two 6L6 GC power tubes, a 5U4 GB rectifier tube, a three section can capacitor, which is bad, internally shorted. I don't know what's wrong with it, but as soon as you would power it up with enough voltage to run much, it would immediately make this rectifier tube overheat and red plate. So to remedy that, flip this thing over. Here underneath we've got mostly original wiring. Everything's it's all cloth covered, pretty cool. It's stained in rust and everything else, and connections aren't real pretty. So I cleaned this up a little bit, believe it or not. And actually, the chassis itself's fairly clean. Most of the crap's just cosmetic and mostly external corrosion. But anyway, so this is that capacitor that was dead. So you can see I've removed all the leads from it, spliced them into some new, also cloth covered wiring. Around here to this tag strip I added, and created this little network of individual capacitors to replace the three that are in there. This was to replace a great big, like the size of a C-cell battery, Mallory paper capacitor that went from that pin and looped around here to the ground lug on this socket here. I don't know if you can read that or not, but that's a new 35 microfarad 50 volt DC capacitor I also replaced. Otherwise, everything else under here is pretty much as it has been for the last 50 some odd years. Let's throw these back up here. And by the way, these replacement tubes I stuck in here are Electro-Harmonics, all made in Russia. I've had pretty good luck with them on a couple other amps. So then coming out of this is all original wiring. Also looks pretty well, except for my ghetto ground down here in this temporary speaker harness to plug it into this big beauty here that was never intended to necessarily have a guitar amp attached to it. It makes a good test cabinet though. This is what appears to be the original output transformer. Still works fine. So that brings us to the preamp section, which inside is actually still pretty clean compared to the outside, which is the opposite of clean. However, the internals that did have issues have all been replaced and everything works like new. I replaced all the jacks all along here. All the old ones were corroded up and terrible. I've replaced all the potentiometers. They were all frozen, rusted solid, so now they actually function. I used Bourne's 500K pots in every position, including the tremolo. Audio taper for volume on both channels. Linear taper for tone on both channels. Linear taper for the tremolo speed, and I couldn't find a Bourne's SPST 500K pot with the switching action. So that's an alpha pot, which is seems a little more cheaply made. It had a huge long shaft sticking out the front that had to be trimmed off, but it works fine. And really, I think you could probably use just a regular 500K pot. The only, there's nothing actually connected to the switched lugs. I don't know how close I can get and keep this in focus, but there's really nothing attached to the switch lugs on the bottom. So really the only purpose of that click is to, to give you a positive feeling when you turn it on, I think. Otherwise, most of the stuff's still original. Again, all the wiring and everything is factory. 99.9% of the resistors are all factory. I replaced all the yellow capacitors in here. Our new Mallory 150M series, I believe they were, 0.05 microfarad. I don't remember the voltage. I'm thinking 35. Oh no, I'm mixing them up. Those are 630 volts. So anyway, those the old ones that were in there were the original red standard branded ones that look like M80s. They're made out of paper and we're not in great shape, and I thought, well, we're changing things, we may as well go ahead and replace them. I also roasted the original ceramic capacitor that was here. I replaced it with this silver mica capacitor of the same value. All new Electro-Harmonix 12AX7 preamp tubes and tremolo tube. A new light bulb, that one was destroyed. Original switch still works and everything. Standby still works like it's supposed to. Yeah, I think that. Oh, I've also down here, they're kind of hard to see. Some of these bottom ones were kind of hard to get to, but I did go ahead and replace them in the same position the originals came out in. I probably could have like looped them over the top or something, but I don't know. That's kind of half-assed. I wanted to keep them in the original place, but those are the same values as that silver one in the bottom of the power section. And I think that's about all there is to see in here. There is two sheet metal shields. There's one that solders to this pair of ground lugs on these jacks, and one that solders to this pair of ground lugs on these jacks that kind of covers it. I presume it's for to deflect interference or something. I don't really know. I've been testing it with them off of there, but when I put it back together, I'll go ahead and reinstall those. So let's put this back together and I'll show you what it sounds like.
Thank you.